This chart right here is going to make or break the AI revolution. Let me explain. There's two ways this could go. This could either lead to the biggest misallocation of spending the world has ever seen, or the largest technological supercycle that the world has ever seen. Yeah, there's really no in between. It sounds dramatic, but it's the facts. Let's talk about it. This map right here is all the data taken straight from the US Department of Energy related to planned data center capacity. The amount of power that these data centers are going to require and are capable of putting out in the form of artificial intelligence. The bigger and darker the circle, the more power that we should expect in those regions. Data centers are going to be much larger in these areas. You're probably going to see your Meta Prometheus, your XAI Colossus. But the kicker about this chart, what you're seeing right now is planned build out. It looks like a lot, and it is. But if we just flip over and sort on total data center capacity, did you even see a change on the screen? Let's look again here. Total to planned. It almost appears like planned is all of the data center capacity, as we don't have as much as we plan to have over the coming years. Now, the most interesting part about this actually lines up with something we were just talking about yesterday, a signal that we saw on MCore Group, Constellation Energy, and Vistra. All very high confidence, high conviction that things are looking up for power producers, for electrical service companies. In this chart, let's just say, speaks to that point exactly. The data center capacity that we have in operation right now is next to nothing outside of some highly concentrated areas like Houston, like Arizona, California, DC. But again, when we look at this planned map, there is a lot of data center capacity to be built out in the near future. Now, I want to remind you, this dark red, this greater than 3,500 megawatts, 4 of those big, ugly nuclear reactors that you see on the side of the road, those things are 1.2 gigawatts on average. So we're talking about, for each of these big red circles, that's 4 nuclear reactors worth of power coming from data center. Now, I don't know about you, that sounds pretty absurd, and it gets even a little crazier than that. This chart right here shows the number of data centers across various countries, and what do you know? Who would you expect to be at the very tippy top of that list? Yeah, it's the United States of America with over 5,300 data centers. And I will say that should make some sense to you, right? The US has some of the best performing AI models, large language models like Claude, like ChatGPT, like Gemini. The world has right now. They're on the frontier of AI large language model development. But number 2 to the US is China. And if we look over here, China has less than 450 data centers, less than 1/10 of what the United States has. How can we remedy that? Because that doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense, especially when you consider the fact that the frontier models coming out of China, like DeepSeek, like Kimi, which is keeping up with the best of the best frontier models in some categories, according to this AI large language model leaderboard. But the point isn't to compare across different categories, because as we know, ChatGPT might be really good at some very general or more creative tasks, while Claude might be really good at maintaining integrity and structure of code. These things can vary, but the point is, a model that can somewhat keep up with the performance of OpenAI's latest model, and yet the country has literally less than 10% of the data center capacity that the United States does, is a little troublesome, especially when you consider that the planned data center capacity build out is only exponentiating with time. We compare what we just saw to operational or in construction here, it doesn't even hold a candle to it. I mean, we're looking at a third to a fourth, maybe a fifth of what we're going to see in this planned map right here. So let's just say what the world has right now, by the facts, it doesn't matter what you think, the facts are telling us that the world does not have the amount of data center power capacity that it's going to have in the coming years, unless one thing goes wrong. We said it could be the greatest misallocation of money the world has ever seen and the biggest collapse of a technological revolution. Think back to just about a year ago today, January 2025. What happened? Well, the stock market absolutely crumbled because there was news coming out of China that DeepSeek, their latest frontier AI model was competitive with OpenAI. And while they spent about 1/1000th in development costs compared to OpenAI. Yeah, we know at this point, Sam Altman and OpenAI, they have some big spending commitments, right? We're talking about over 1.2 trillion for a company that's making, what, 20 to 30 billion dollars a year in revenue. So that's a whole nother topic, a whole nother problem for a separate video. We're talking about power capacity today. But the point is, if this DeepSeek model can do or relatively compete with, say, OpenAI and spend 1/1000th or 1/500th of what OpenAI spent in development costs, then what model do you think is going to be cheaper for the consumer and therefore probably be used more frequently? And back when DeepSeek came out, they also said that they're going to use 90% less energy consumption, 92% lower carbon footprint, use 2,000 frankly outdated NVIDIA AI chips because the US banned the export of the latest and greatest chips like Vera Rubin, like the H200, GB200 to China. That gets political, but the US wants to maintain technological advantage over China when it comes to their chips technology, when it comes to NVIDIA's technology, frankly. But DeepSeek used 2,000 outdated chips and was outperforming ChatGPT on some benchmarks where OpenAI was using 8 times that amount, over 16,000 GPU. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm making a choice between using DeepSeek, which is competitive with OpenAI in a lot of scenarios, and they're practically free, versus a ChatGPT subscription, you could probably begin to see why some people were afraid. And that's exactly what happened. It led to the biggest sell-off in one company in stock market history, over $600 billion in market cap. That one sell-off of NVIDIA, market cap $600 billion, that would put you at the 28th biggest country in the world by GDP. So I think you can begin to understand just how consequential this DeepSeek breakthrough really was. This, frankly, software breakthrough that didn't require all this data center capacity that the United States has over China. They were able to make it work with one, less capable chips, less advanced technology, and two, with 1/10 of the amount of data centers and power capacity. So as you think about this, the AI industrial revolution, this super cycle of investment by all the biggest tech companies in the world is really predicated on one assumption. And that assumption is that whatever we're trying to work towards, whether it's Sam Altman says AGI, super intelligence, or just this like more productive form of artificial intelligence that makes people, 40 to 50 to 100% more productive and takes care of the things that humans don't want to do and allows you to focus on the more creative tasks. Whatever that distinction is, the assumption is that you have to continue buying NVIDIA chips to reach greater and greater heights. But as we saw with DeepSeek, if you can have a breakthrough when it comes to the software and you can spend, 1/1000th of the development cost to have similar performance, then it begs the question, the total operating and in construction data center capacity that we have currently, I'm not so sure needs a whole lot more planned build out like we just saw. About 17 big red circles just showed up on this map. Is this really necessary if we have a major breakthrough in software? Maybe not. And again, we don't really have to get into the consequences of what that would look like, but you could imagine NVIDIA selling their chips at a 70 to 75% margin for $50 to $60 billion in revenue for a 1 gigawatt data center. Those margins and those revenue numbers would probably come down if this planned demand also started coming down. Now, this may sound bearish and pessimistic on the future of AI technology and build-up, but it's actually not. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what you think or I think about where this AI industrial revolution is going. That might matter eventually. But right now, if we look at the people who are in charge of spending the money to support the AI industrial revolution, Sam Altman, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Satya Nadella, all the most important players in the AI space, their opinion certainly matters a lot more, especially when their opinion directly results in billions of dollars of revenue going straight into NVIDIA's pockets in this case. Now, a lot of this data center capacity is going to continue to use the best chips that it possibly can, and some of those best chips that are coming out very soon, I think in the back back half of 2026 are Vera Rubin, NVIDIA's next-gen AI chip platform. And let's just step through some opinions by the CEOs of these companies that literally print money like it's their job. Well, actually, there's exceptions to this in OpenAI and Anthropic's case, but you'll see what I mean here. Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, arguably the most important figure in the AI spending space. If ChatGPT and OpenAI go under, probably in some trouble here. Intelligence scales with compute. When we add more compute, models get more capable, solve hardened problems, and make a bigger impact for people. The NVIDIA Rubin platform helps us keep scaling this progress so advanced intelligence benefits everyone. Intelligence scales with compute. In other words, buy as many NVIDIA chips as you possibly can, install the data center capacity that needs to be installed, and AI will get better with it. It will benefit everybody. Dario, co-founder and CEO of Anthropic. Think Claude, one of the other best models in the space right now. The efficiency gains in the NVIDIA Rubin platform represent the kind of infrastructure progress that enables longer memory, better reasoning, and more reliable outputs. In other words, NVIDIA's Rubin Ultra results in better models that make people's lives better. The Zuck, founder and CEO of Meta, NVIDIA's Rubin platform promises to deliver the step change in performance and efficiency required to deploy the most advanced models to billions of people. Elon Musk, NVIDIA Rubin will be a rocket engine for AI. If you want to train and deploy frontier models at scale, this is the infrastructure you use. And Rubin will remind the world that NVIDIA is the gold standard. What do all these quotes from the highest level executives with the most leverage in the AI space and frankly the most money, which matters the most at the end of the day for the continued spending in this technological revolution, what do they all have in common? Well, they all have in common this exact statement: buy NVIDIA chips as much as possible. The more NVIDIA chips, the better AI gets, the better we can sell our AI products to consumers. Microsoft Copilot, Elon Musk and Grok, Meta and Llama. They all have their specific use cases. Some are better for coding, some are better for creative, generalized tasks. But you get the point. The point is everybody needs Vera Rubin. Everybody needs the best NVIDIA chips with the most advanced supercomputers the world has ever seen to keep up and compete in the space in general. And finally, coming full circle, how does this relate to some of the things we're seeing across the market and the dynamics of AI-related stocks right now? Well, we can see from this screener, which I personally designed to help people for free identify opportunities using quantitative analysis. I'm an engineer. I like to look at numbers. I like to see data support the logical decisions that I'm making. And so if we look here, this just flags the highest conviction, high confidence signals that we see across the market right now. And what do you know? In some of the biggest power providers and electrical service companies, all the same thing. High confidence signals that show a very, very positive sign for these companies in the very near future. We're looking at Oklo. Again, this company's highly speculative, but the fact of the matter is they're looking to install small modular reactors to avoid all the red tape associated with those big 1.2 gigawatt nuclear reactors. Great signal there. And two of the companies that we've been looking at very closely, especially as of late, are Vistra and CEG. They've been pulling back after a massive rally. Two of the biggest clean energy providers in the United States. When you think clean energy providers, what do you think of? Well, you look back at the Department of Energy chart where we saw planned data center capacity. In other words, the need and demand for clean power absolutely exploding from what we currently have in operating and in construction. I want to be crystal clear, just because this signal happened to yield a 4.3% return over one day, just because it worked out that well, doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be perfect every time. But the idea is that the quantitative analysis telling us that, and the logical fundamental analysis when it comes to the overall sector and the dynamics of building out these AI data centers is also agreeing on that. And combine that with some analysts raising their price targets, sentiment in the market beginning to shift back to pro AI investments, getting away from the scares that we've seen over the past few weeks, you could understand why these signals become pretty powerful. Yeah, they're no guarantee, but it gives you some insight. Hey, this is what you should look for in the coming days, in the coming weeks. And that's exactly what we're seeing with Constellation, Vistra, MCore, which I literally flagged late last week and has returned, 5% over the last 2 days? A company that barely moves 0.5% a day? This is incredible stuff. And so again, I'm no expert, but when you consider many different sources of data, like we just talked about, the fundamental analysis, what is the power capacity going to look like? Is that backed by data, or is that just some opinion? Well, no. The CEOs of the most powerful companies, the most wealthy companies in the world that have the ability to spend the most money, are all in agreement with it. So the fundamentals make sense. They back up the data, the signals, the numbers, the actual behavior of investors in the market is backing up that data. But again, it's all predicated on this idea that the expansionary nature of AI investment hinges on models getting better in scaling their performance with spend. If you have a DeepSeek moment again, where a Chinese company comes out with a model that outperforms ChatGPT using 1/100th of the cost in 1/100th of compute, there's going to be problems. And people are going to start to question, like, hey, do we really need to be building out 4 nuclear reactors in every city across the United States to support data center power capacity? Maybe not. I don't like to speculate, but I'm definitely leaning towards the side or the opinion that AGI or superintelligence is going to need some sort of software breakthrough. There's no way using more and more NVIDIA compute, in my opinion, is going to get us to that next step up in functionality and capability that some people expect. Again, I think a large part of what we're seeing with these CEOs like Sam Altman, like Dario, so OpenAI and Anthropic, they need to continue spending because they already made all these insane commitments to buy NVIDIA chips, to buy AMD, to buy Avgo and Broadcom technology. Like we saw with NVIDIA and OpenAI, for every gigawatt of NVIDIA compute that OpenAI builds out, NVIDIA is going to give them $10 billion. If all of a sudden these companies pull away this promised investment, then obviously multiples on stocks like NVIDIA, like AMD are going to come down because their growth just doesn't make much sense anymore. So I think especially when you consider a deal like OpenAI and AMD have, where OpenAI directly benefits from AMD's stock going up and they're desperate for cash to continue spending money on NVIDIA chips to be the best model, because again, that's the sentiment right now. The more you spend, the more you build out on this AI data center compute, the better you're going to be, and the better model is probably going to win. But I think there's a lot of vested interest at the end of the day. Like if these companies say, hey, we don't actually believe spending is the way to go, we believe that we need to invest in some sort of software development to have this breakthrough, then I think there's like this self-fulfilling prophecy of data center companies, software companies coming back to reality that, hey, this isn't the way forward. We can't just keep spending on NVIDIA chips to get to where we need to go. That would cripple a lot of these companies. And we all know if NVIDIA's growth story fails, then a lot of these companies would also fall not too far behind them. So I hope this sheds some light on the whole power capacity argument, and are we going to reach AGI or superintelligence? Nobody knows. You can give your best educated guess, but all that matters in this moment is how much money are these companies willing to spend? And it's clear the answer is a lot. And there's going to be a lot of support probably from the government. And when the government has your back, we all know it's kind of hard to fail when that happens. But don't just let logic guide your decision making when it comes to buying a particular company or industry. You need to look at the data, break down all the sentiment and the candlesticks into data that you can actually read and understand. That's what this platform does for you. If you want access to it, I'm doing a beta trial right now for 30 days. Check it out. Let me know what you think. That's it for me. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.